We're just gonna jump right into this shit today, not even worrying about a damn intro, though I have to tell YouTube owner to go fuck himself. Kick it off right into the questions. Next question from Robin. What are your thoughts with everything involving transgender people in bathrooms, including schools and states that have passed bills banning the use of using a bathroom in which you identify with? You know, I say this plenty of times. I live in New York City, well, the suburbs now, and to me, I've never had an issue with it. I mean, I know transgender people. There's actually someone at my job that's actually transitioning. I'll talk more about that in a second. But I know drag queens. I know gay people, bisexual people, flamboyantly gay guys, butch women. All I care about is whether it's someone I can get along with or they're going to be an asshole. That's it. That's all I care about. However, I know there are people out there that are not as unfucking caring as I am. They're closed-minded, they're judgmental, and to a certain extent, I understand people's concerns over the bathroom issue, but of course, crazy people and conservatives want to turn the shit into adult men going into women's bathrooms to molest little girls and whatnot. Here's the reality. This bathroom issue only affects men going into women's bathroom because not a single guy would give a fuck if a woman walked into a men's bathroom because basically she's going to a stall to squat. Men are not going to cringe or act like they don't want a woman to see them. If anything, that lady has a serious set of steel nuts to go into a men's bathroom. So let's get that shit out the way first. This is solely about a man going into a woman's bathroom. A transgender person going into a men's bathroom where they could be physically assholes is far more threatening than a ladies' room. Let's just be honest about that for a second. Who is more likely to physically hurt someone, men or women? Closed-minded people immediately assume that a man wanting to enter a ladies' room has issues. Mental issues, a disease, a fetish, gets off on little kids or women or whatever the fuck it is. But the scope of who the law is trying to target are people who have gender dysphoria. They were born one gender but identify as the other. And they want to be treated and use restrooms they associate with. And I get that people who still believe in Adam and Eve want them to go to the bathroom that matches their plumbing. If you have a pipe, head to the men's room. If you have a drain, head to the women's. And especially if you have a pipe, you cannot go to the women's room. Understandably, there are women, including those who have no issues with transgenders, who are uncomfortable with this. So here is what I think the solution should be. Outside of a place having the ability to create a unisex bathroom, you know, one room with a toilet that's available to anyone, the laws being passed should apply to people who have already gone through the hormone therapy. For people who want to identify as the other sex, want to become the other sex, you have to go through the gene therapy transition. As long as someone is going through the gene therapy, then I think they should be allowed to use the bathroom that they want. But without going through the gene therapy yet, you're going to have to stick to the bathroom that matches the plumbing. That's a reasonable compromise between the two sides of the argument. I know it's not going to make either side perfectly happy, but the reality is this isn't about winning a battle. It's about determining a reasonable outcome that isn't discriminatory and that doesn't give in to discrimination. Now, as I mentioned, I actually have someone on my job who identifies as a woman. I believe he's doing the gene therapy now. He wears dresses with leggings. He's a hideous looking woman, I'm not gonna lie, because this motherfucker's like 6'3" and looks more like a drag queen than anything. But not a single person at my company bothers him or teases him. People might say things to others, you know, but nobody directly taunts him. Personally, some of the shit he's worn looks like a pair of grandma's curtains. So at worst, he has bad taste in clothing choices, but he still goes by his birth name. He hasn't asked to be addressed any differently, still pees upright at a urinal, although I don't want to know how the fuck that process works. But ultimately, he's treated like everyone else at my job. Nobody treats him differently. Nobody belittles him for his decision or turns him into an outcast. He's just another person at my job that people treat the same way now as they did before he decided to transition. And the reality is that normalcy, that acceptance to be treated as they were before, is exactly what most transgender people want. Next question from Maco Boy, and here he says how much he loves my work, and like I always tell people, thank you, glad you appreciate what I do. Anyways, his question: do you think the best game in the world has already been made yet, or has yet to be made? And if it hasn't, what will it need? I mean, here's the reality: it doesn't exist. No matter how great games are, there's no perfect game yet, because no matter how great a game is, another game probably did something slightly better. Now, obviously, there are amazing games that will stand the test of time. The Last of Us, Zelda Ocarina of Time, Half-Life, Super Mario 3. But just looking at that small list, how would you even compare them against each other to determine what the best game of all time is? You can't go by graphics, can't go by story, can't go by sales or ratings, because it's really impossible to sort out. Ultimately, the best game is never going to be created because it's impossible to beat every other game in every other single detail. You can't top another game's graphics even if you have a better story. You can't top the game type if you're like a platformer or you're an RPG. It's almost impossible. Now, if you were to say this is the best game of its genre, you can make a case. If you want to say that Mario's the best platformer, sure. If you want to say Grand Theft Auto is the greatest open world game, sure, you can make an argument with the same genre. But if you try comparing cross-category against one another, you'll never be able to do it. Next up, from Phoenix21, would you rather have the strength of a tiger or the speed of a cheetah? Which one and why? He says he's a long-time subscriber and hopefully he remembers me. No, I don't remember anybody, motherfucker. Hey, look, I'm just being honest with this bitch. For me, speed. No question about that. Strength can always be countered. Strength can always be leveraged no matter what you look at, whether it's nature, sports, cars, people. Strength can always be countered, usually with a little bit of intelligence, but you can't teach speed. Speed is something you can't counter with strength, especially if the speed gap is that much greater. Put it this way, just by using your example, a tiger and a cheetah, they both need to hunt. Who can chase down a kill? A cheetah sure can. Sure, a tiger will overpower the cheetah once the cheetah has done all the work, but the tiger wouldn't actually be able to catch the cheetah. The cheetah would need to be pinned in a location with no escape or ambush. If you look at the success rates of the kills per big cats, cheetahs are only second to leopards for the best success rate. Lions are next, and then tigers pull up the rear. The bigger the cat, the less successful their hunt, because chances are their prey is fucking fast. Tigers can pretty much outmuscle anything, but you have to actually get to the fucking animal to make your kill. While other animals might get the kill, tigers will certainly come over and take their kill from them, but ultimately, the cheetah's the one that does the work. The cheetah's the one that's catching those animals. So you damn sure know I would be the cheetah over all those shits. Next up, we have questions that 2 people actually asked. However, I think this motherfucker has multiple screen names. I've been saying this shit for every question and answer session. He fucking shows up every time, and then some people come right after him with almost the same exact name. But anyways, 2 questions that came up that were almost identical. From Chris Choppa Gunner, he says, with fanboyism out the way, I know you love rap and hip-hop, so just out of curiosity, what do you think of the state of hip-hop today? Annoyances, things like that, and is the mumble rap the next evolution of hip-hop and its downfall from here? Then later, I got another similar question from TMGxGator. Look at that motherfucking name. You said that hip-hop and rap has fallen off and you prefer the older music because the new artists are untalented. Although there are artists such as Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and Childish Gambino keeping the music innovative and creative, when do you think hip-hop fell off? Now, I'll tell you guys both right now. I can't even listen to the garbage they put out nowadays. I haven't been able to listen to rap for years because it's such absolutely awful compared to what it used to be. You know, hip-hop and rap started out describing the inner city struggles. It started out old school. 2 MCs battling as to who had the best lyrics and who could create lyrics on the spot without writing this shit down. It started out about how tough life was growing up for many of these rappers, and eventually, through their music, they were able to get away from their struggles. You look at Naughty by Nature, Run DMC, Rakim, Tupac, Biggie, Wu-Tang. It was their shitty childhoods that molded their lyrics and their music. Because rap took off, in part thanks to the East Coast, West Coast rivalry fucking 20, 25 years ago. Oh, motherfucker, I feel old right now. But, in essence, because of that, rap started making money. It didn't always make money. When it started to land major record deals, platinum hits, $1 million contracts, $1 million tours, oh man, did the fucking game change. You know, Biggie wasn't rapping about how he struggled like in Juicy. Now, it was more money, more problems. LL Cool J wasn't rapping about his radio. It was bottles of Cristal and tropical islands. By time money took over the rap game, the struggle was over. There hasn't been a struggle for a long ass time, because if you wrote some decent lyrics and you got signed to a deal early, you were making money before people even knew who you were. That's how the music industry changed, and that's how hip-hop changed. That's why the lyrics nowadays are about how much money they already have. That lifestyle that they lead is what they earn by being famous, but the reality is, the money they made occurred well before they got famous. Now, of course, some of these guys have had shitty upbringings. They grew from the projects. They grew from the ghettos and the hard times. There's no question about that. But by the time people knew who a rapper already was, they already had millions. The crap artists put out nowadays have nothing in common with what rap started as. Unlike other genres like country, rock and roll, R&B, they haven't strayed too far from their origins. Rap and hip-hop is one of the few music genres that changed because of money. Plain and simple. Money changed the entire process. Money got to these people before they got to talk about their struggles. So by the time they started talking about their struggles, they're already millionaires. Now, as for when you can look back as to when hip-hop finally fell off, money was obviously the start of that. But to me, the biggest fall off was when Timberland signed Magoo to a goddamn record deal. There is no question about that. You will never be able to argue with me any differently. If anyone who doesn't know, Magoo had to be the worst fucking rapper you can ever goddamn imagine. Because he was so fucking horrible, what did Timberland do? he synthesized his voice. The very first start of all this fucking auto-tuning bullshit when it came to at least the rap game. When he started that shit, and people were like, oh man, this motherfucker was able to get a rap deal, I could get a rap deal, that started the downfall. When you were able to auto-tune your shit, when you were able to just write something and let some motherfucker say it, and then go back to the studio and just synthesize his voice, that was the complete downfall of hip-hop. That was the downfall of actual singing with R&B. Everything went out the fucking window when Timbaland took Magoo to mainstream and show that you don't have to be talented, you just have to know how to use a computer to make this motherfucker money. Next question, for some more hip-hop, Wavy213 wants to know, what is your top 10 favorite list of rappers and why? Some people decide based on lyricism influence, so I don't know how you would approach this. Now, you said top 10 favorites, so you didn't say the top 10 best, because narrowing that shit down would be damn near impossible. Here's how I would classify someone as my favorite. If they're on the radio, and I heard XYZ artist and he has a new song coming out today, how interested would I be to hear that new song? If I knew this rapper was coming out with a song and it's going to be debuted later today on this station, I'm going to tune into that station if I really like that artist. If I don't like that artist, I'm just like, if I don't have time, I'm just not going to listen to it. I really don't give a shit. Now, I also want to clarify that some artists were part of groups, or some groups were also influential. So I don't just want to pick out the single people, because that wouldn't be fair to some of the groups that have also been part of the music that I've always loved listening to. There were rap groups that I could listen to all day long. So kind of feel like you left those people out because you wanted to focus on solo artists. But if I had to pick a bunch of artists, including solo or groups, in no particular order, so this is not 1 to 10, this is just the top 10 that I would listen to: Biggie and Tupac, Jay-Z, Tribe Called Quest, Wu-Tang Clan, Run DMC, Eminem, DMX, Naughty by Nature, and Outkast. Those are the 10 that if I had to, and believe me, there are plenty more that I would put on the list. If you put like a top 20 or top 25, I'd be able to name a whole bunch more. But if I had to pick the 10 people or groups that if their song was coming on today, later on the radio, and it was going to be world debuted on this station, those would be the 10 that I'd be like, okay, I'm staying tuned into this motherfucker. There's a whole bunch more that I wish I could put on that list, but since you only asked for 10, those are the 10 that I'm going to stick with. Next question, since we already heard from Chris Choppa Gunna, now we're hearing from Chris Gunna. I'm telling you, man, these motherfuckers are just making up names. Anyways, question is, what are your thoughts on the state of video games right now as of 3/5/2017? He has an actual fucking date in this motherfucker, with the lack of new IPs, concept, remakes, broken games, Treyarch and Bethesda still being in business, Nintendo Switch, and the PlayStation 4 Pro. He also puts a little bit of background here, which I kind of disagree with the most part. He says, the reason why I ask is some people are thinking this is the last console generation. Sony is struggling, Microsoft is pushing to combine PC and Xbox into one ecosystem, and the Switch is going to flop and force Nintendo into making portable games. All those things, don't agree with whatsoever. We're going to talk about that shit in a second. Because video games are not in trouble. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. But you have to admit, there are some red flags going up right now. We're not in the peak of video games anymore, and to be honest, it's trending on the downswing of a peak that I would have considered about 5 to 10 years ago. I would say the very peak of video games occurred towards the end of the PlayStation 2's life cycle to about the 3rd year of the Wii or so. That was the peak of games because the console war was about as competitive as possible. You know, PlayStation 2 blew away Nintendo and Microsoft. There was no question about that. But 360 showed that Microsoft could actually compete with Sony. And then Nintendo turned everything around by stomping the shit out of Sony and Microsoft with the Wii, and nobody expected that. Sales figures from all the games and money was made in the industry at that time, and it was significant because of that console war. And I think that that's what you can look at as the peak of gaming at that time. Now, with every peak comes a downslope, and that's sort of what we're in right now. Video games are still lucrative, but they're not as lucrative as they were before. Games aren't selling as well nowadays, although PlayStation 4 certainly pulled their weight in console sales, but obviously the Wii U didn't. So I don't know why you say, oh, Sony is struggling. You have to realize, Sony is a multi-conglomerate business. They have a whole bunch of units, but their PlayStation unit is incredibly lucrative. Their movie industry is incredibly lucrative. Their electronics is struggling, but overall, Sony is not going out of business. Xbox is struggling, and it continues to cancel exclusive games each and every year. Now, this whole thing about Microsoft wanting to combine the PC into the ecosystem of the Xbox, I'll be honest with you, it's probably going to happen in the next video game console where the PC type upgrades, where you go from Xbox to Scorpio, whatever the fuck it is, that's probably going to be the next type of console that we see in the future, but it's not happening anytime soon. Switch, on the other hand, it actually had a pretty decent launch, but most reviews say pretty much the same thing. Aside from the fanboys of Nintendo, they can't see big sales figures for games coming outside of key Nintendo names like Mario or Zelda. So ultimately, Like I said in that video where I was predicting what would happen with Switch, they're going to have some key success as long as their big name games come out. Zelda sold a lot of consoles. That's exactly what they needed. The problem is there's going to be a gap from probably the next Mario game, and that's where you're going to see whether or not Switch can actually hold up when it comes to particular sales. Now, one thing you also have to keep in mind, game prices have not raised in 12 to 13 years. Think about this for a second. We're still spending $60 on games, and the supplement that has to make up for that difference is coming in the form of microtransactions. That's where studios are hoping to make up the additional money, because you have to realize development costs have gone up. Everything across the board in cost takes more money to make game these days, such as employee salaries, employee benefits, new hardware, software, rent, where they operate their studios. Yet the cost of games has not increased. It takes longer to put out a quality game because developers raise the bar on how well a game needs to be created. You can't roll out a buggy piece of shit and make money off of that. Well, unless you're fucking Mass Effect Andromeda. I mean, just look at Assassin's Creed. Remember that game where the motherfucker's face was falling off? Now compare that to the Grand Theft Auto. Compare that to The Last of Us, The Witcher. Top-notch games, earning top-notch reviews, and putting out some of the best quality you can have in the game. And they're doing that for the same price that they were charging 12 to 13 years ago. Games didn't go up to $70 this console generation. Every other prior console generation graduation, from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3, every time we had a graduation, we had a $10 increase on games. This time, it did not happen. Games are still at $60. So studios are having to find ways of cutting costs, cutting corners, saving money. That's a red flag. While the video game industry isn't going out of business anytime soon, it certainly isn't printing the money the way they used to years ago. Activision, EA, still making enough games, still making plenty of money. But my honest expectation is that we're going to see more and more games relying on DLC and microtransactions to make up for the development costs over these years. And I expect publishers and studios to ask their partners at Sony and Microsoft and even Nintendo to roll out more versions of their consoles in quicker years to make sure the sales figures don't fall too much. Every time they roll out a new console, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox whatever 2 now, I don't know what the fuck the next one's gonna be. Every time they roll out a new console, that pushes sales. So ideally, what you're gonna see in the future is you're not gonna see 10-year consoles. You're gonna see probably 6-year consoles before an upgrade. You're gonna see what Xbox is doing now. We roll out the Xbox One, then we're gonna roll out Scorpio. After Scorpio, we're gonna roll out Viper. I don't know, I'm just making shit up here. Then Xbox Infinity, who knows? But essentially what's gonna happen is you're gonna start seeing consoles, you're gonna start seeing quicker releases, and upgraded version of the consoles to sort of make up for the video game lack in sales right now. We're not at a peak. However, video games are not going anywhere anytime soon. Next question from BluexSol. Hey, what's up, Loco? I enjoy your channel a lot and appreciate your content. My question is, have you ever been into fighting games like Tekken or something? If you have, then how was the experience and your thoughts on it with esports and how it's evolved since you were younger? I was into fighting games years ago. I can't even remember what my last fighting game was, but I do remember the last one that I played the ever-loving shit out of, and that was that Street Fighter 2 Ultra Turbo Motherfucker Edition, whatever the hell. It was the one that had that, you know, it had Cammy, that fake Native American, whatever the fuck his name was, the Jamaican guy DJing that Bruce Lee motherfucker, whatever the hell it was. That was the last one that I truly played the shit out of. I mean, I'm talking like every fucking day. You know, now I had some Tekken games, I had some Mortal Kombat games, but look, over time, my flavor in games have changed, where fighting games didn't appeal to me as much. You know, I haven't bought a fighting game in a very long time, and I probably won't. It's just not a genre that I really play anymore. Now, as far as esports, I could get into a whole rant on just esports alone, but essentially, when it comes to fighting games and esports, that seems like a very good combo together. Because you have one person on this side, one person on that side. How are you able to control your character, and do you have the moves to actually win in this motherfucker? I don't see anything wrong with that. Next up, from David Paxon. I noticed you had exercise equipment in your house tour video. What kind of shape are you in, and what kind of exercises do you do? Actually, that's the better half's exercise equipment. Look, for the most part, we're active, but we're not gym nuts. I'm not going to be in the gym, being that asshole, bench pressing the whole left side of the building in this motherfucker. But at the same time, I'm certainly not a slob. I mean, you've seen my snowboarding videos. You have to be some kind of condition to handle snowboarding in the winter in this motherfucker. You know, I play golf in the summer. I walk the course and carry my bag. I'm not like one of these assholes that go around in a fucking golf cart, man. I don't fuck around with that shit. you know, unless the course says it's mandatory that I have to use. But obviously, I walked the whole course holding on to my fucking bag. So I'm average. I'm not a fitness guru. I'm not a male model type motherfucker, but I'm certainly not a parade float that can't see my own 2 feet. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and give my measurements and my height, my weight. Actually, I don't even know my fucking weight at this point. But if anyone were to see me and look at me, they'd be like, oh, he's just an average looking person. Nothing wrong with that. So once again, we're going to cut it off right at the 20-minute mark or so. If you still haven't seen your questions, don't worry, they're coming. I'm going to be answering all the questions that I got this week. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in the next question and answer session video.